essentially he was like, oh, you actually have to become a different person. Your lifestyle has to fundamentally change. The people you spend time with has to change.
Okay. Yeah.
So what's this? Your family? You're just going to stop having dinner with your family?
Yeah.
Your best friends, all of a sudden they're not good enough?
People you work with, change your job, I guess.
Change your job? Like, really? You're going to do all of that?
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barber, and with me is Brad Pilon. And I was watching a podcast, and the interviewer was he's not an expert in anything. He just has experts on.
Yeah, it's kind of a standard podcast, right?
Yeah, it's one of the downstream of Tim Ferriss, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And anyways, the guest was an expert in health and physiology, exercise science, nutrition, kind of all that stuff.
Right.
PhD researcher type. I'm going to remain nameless. I don't necessarily want to call people out. And he said something that I found was like, it just doesn't sound right. And I could see why people wouldn't agree with this, or it would turn them off. So they were talking about weight loss, and the interviewer was just asking, like, what do you think it takes, or what does it take to get to where you want to go? And the answer was more or less, you've got to change everything about yourself and about your life.
So become a completely different person.
I think he literally said, become a different person.
No,
like literally, I think he said that.
Right.
So the sentiment, that was the sentiment for sure. So he's kind of not wrong, but it's kind of a ridiculous answer to give somebody to lose weight.
Right.
So essentially he was like, oh, you actually have to become a different person. Your lifestyle has to fundamentally change. The people you spend time with has to change.
Okay. Yeah.
So what's this? Your family? You're just going to stop having dinner with your family?
Yeah.
Your best friends, all of a sudden they're not good enough?
People you work with, change your job, I guess.
Change your job? Like, really? You're going to do all of that? And so I found it to be kind of an absurd thing to tell people. And no wonder people can't sustain weight loss, because that's a ridiculous thing to try to do, is upend your entire life just for the sake of losing some weight.
So I guess
think that, but he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Because what he said does work in the short term for when people lose, 20, 30 pounds in 3 months. You can kind of do that for a few months.
Narrow in and focus, and don't go out at all. Walk 5 times in the morning. Just you getting ready for a fitness show. Just narrow in for 3 months and become a different person.
Mm-hmm.
But lifetime, that's different.
Right. So you can avoid a couple dinners out. You can tell your family, I'm just not going to quite eat with you guys for the next couple of months. You can tell your friends, like, hey, if we go do something, I'm going to kind of be off to the side doing my own thing when it comes to eating. But you're not going to live like that your whole life. So, but that's what this person was saying they should do. And within that, I'm sure people listening have understood that there's this pride in how hard it is, and like overcoming the obstacles and overcoming all of this challenge to actually lose the weight. So it becomes a badge of honor for how much you suffered to lose the weight.
Your discipline, you suffer, and then you're better than people who didn't lose weight.
Right. So now what becomes revealing about that is all of that's nonsense. And there is no virtue in how much you suffer to lose weight.
There's no virtue in your body weight, right? So
there's no virtue in your body weight.
Yeah.
It's just, if you want to change it, that's fine. If you don't want to change it, that's fine too.
Yeah.
In neither case is technically, quote unquote, better than the other. It's just your choice.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps we know pretty definitively at a certain BMI, you start increasing certain risks of certain diseases, but it doesn't mean you're going to get them. Those are just risks.
Yeah.
So again, these are all just choices, but it has nothing to do with a statement on you as a person. But these
we really do view it that way, though, eh? Like when you look at people who are not us, but in general, when you look at people who are overweight, you think, well, they just have no control over their appetite, or they're lazy. Like that tends to be, or they just don't care, and that tends to be the dogma. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, something like that.
I don't know what word it was, but yeah, people tend to view it that way. But you're right; that's A, not often the case, and B, just a gross misrepresentation of what's actually going on, right? So,
Well, and the way this is all revealed to you is if you go on a GLP-1 receptor agonist like semaglutide or tirzepatide.
Ozempic for the rest of us who don't speak
Ozempic
medicine.
Yeah, Ozempic, Mounjaro, those things.
Yeah.
So when you go on one of those things, you don't, all that happens is you're just not as hungry and you lose weight.
Yeah, John, doesn't work because calories in, calories out isn't how you lose weight. So
Right. Well, okay, let's just.
Great example though, right? Yeah. So they're just eating less
But you didn't-
room.
But you didn't change who you were. You didn't do anything. You didn't do all of this suffer and grind it out and become a different person and write your daily journal. And
you took a shot once a week, then dealt with a stomachache afterwards.
If you even got that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And the thing you'll hear from people who've been on a GLP-1 is they'll have this reaction. They'll be like, this is it. This is what it feels like for people who don't gain weight. This is all it ever was.
Well, that's what you when you're coaching people on Ozempic, right? You're always just let it do its job. You don't have to, because everybody wants to add stuff in. And you're like, no, this, what you're feeling right now, just that sort of like your body's doing what it's supposed to do. That's it. You don't have, go watch Netflix. You're fine.
All it is you just eat less, but you're not forcing it. You just eat. You still continue to eat till what feels like enough. Just enough is a lot less. So this idea that you have to fundamentally change who you are and change your lifestyle and spend less time with people that you're currently spending time with, because, well, after all, spending time with them is how you got overweight in the first place. So now you got to all of this stuff. Then you got to suffer. Then you've got to be proud of the suffering. That's all utter nonsense. When you take a GLP-1 and realize, oh, I'm just less hungry. That's it. It's not a statement about your character. It's not a statement about your lifestyle. It's nothing to do with the people you hang around with. You literally live the identical life, like identical, same food and everything. You just stop halfway through the plate instead of eating the whole plate. That's it.
So can we then take that exact same learning to people not on Ozempic and be like, if that's how they lose, then you should be able to slowly lose the same way, right? Like, is it possible?
I don't think so. I think it's really that's
where it becomes a new lifestyles, etc.
Put it this way: without something that really, really, really suppresses your appetite, you do have to do everything he was saying, because you're fighting against your current appetite, which
we often say that the amount of body weight you have and the amount of body fat you have is your body's best attempt at reacting to you and your environment. Mm-hmm. So to your point, without changing that environment, you're always going to be fighting against it.
Always. Always, always, always. Because as evidenced by the fact that you have been gaining weight.
Yeah.
So I would always say like, oh, we're in the category of people who gain weight in this society. If you've gained weight, you're like, oh, right. So I'm on that side of the fence. We all know them. Maybe somebody listening is this person who just doesn't gain weight. So but they don't do anything special. They are just like you, eating to what feels enough. But their enough stops right at where their body doesn't gain any weight, and our enough is a bit more. So we're kind of like always up against like, oh, that was too much. So
my enough has always been higher since our late 20s when you and I did like weight gain experiments. And after doing that and eating my way up to 216 at 5'10", and like for force feeding, what I consider to be enough has always been just a bit more now. Like, I really feel like that was like an inflection point on where it's like, that's where a bit more appetite came from. I learned it. It's very hard to unlearn.
And that's how we arrived at fasting and eat, stop, eat as the simplest, most sustainable solution, because you don't change who you are. You don't fundamentally
turn it off for 24 hours, right? And
no
decision making for 24 hours.
None.
Just off.
And it's still effort, but you've compartmentalized the effort to like small chunks of the week.
Yeah.
And the rest of the week, you get to just be who you are. You spend time with who you spend time with. You don't do anything differently except for that one moment. And you don't put that moment in, as Brad would say, you don't put that moment in people's faces. You just choose not to go out that day that you're fasting.
Right. Which is way easier than prolonged 8 months worth of still going out with your buddies to a restaurant and just eating the carrots and celery sticks off of their plate of wings, right? It just, you'll
Right.
break down doing that.
Right. But again, we're talking about a recommendation to fundamentally change your life for good. Like
Yeah.
for good.
Yeah.
Whereas with fasting, you're never going to do that. You change a couple of days a week, 1 or 2 days a week. All the rest of the time, you just stay doing what you're doing with the same people.
Yeah. And then Ozempic, you're not changing anything, right? Like you're just,
you don't change.
Yeah.
You don't change anything. So I guess the narrative here is, if you want to lose weight and you've been struggling and you hear somebody saying you have to fundamentally change your life and it's going to be a struggle, but it's worth it, and you got to be proud of all of the effort and the struggle, that's not going to be the answer. And that's the reason why everyone eventually fails.
Yeah, I feel like it's so let's say I lost weight and maintained it a certain way. So let's say it's not eat, stop, eat, it's just a very regimented diet. Then my opinion would be, in order for anyone else to lose weight, they have to kind of become me and do what I do. And so what they do, in my worldview, fundamentally have to change who they are, because who they are isn't good enough because they're not jacked like me. So they have to do what I do. So I wonder also if we admit that different ways are going to work differently for different people, throw a couple more difference in there for fun, right? That would allow people to fundamentally say who they are, but find a method that works if it's within their constraints, right? But I think a lot of it is, we find when you come to health and weight loss and all the experts, they've gone on their own journey. We've often followed them through it, and they figured out what worked for them. And then they broadcast that to the world. But what worked for them is this very specific thing that often we have to change to match what they do, in their opinion. And I think that's where the idea of you need to fundamentally change, be more disciplined, hardcore, like I am. And I think that's where it comes from. And I think it's fundamentally wrong. But
Yeah. And it makes sense that if they've got proof in themselves that it worked, that they're just speaking from a sense of, well, I know it works.
Yeah.
But but that, and everything, the whole changing something, maybe they did change everything. Maybe they actually spent less time with their family. Maybe they did all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I find it fascinating too, because the one concept is, if you're very, very overweight, and I've never been that overweight, does that idea appeal to you? Like, maybe just appealing to the mass audience and be like, these people want to change who they are, so I'm gonna tell them that's what they have to do. It could be something like it could have been premeditated advice that way.
Yeah, could be. Or again, it could be just from experience, or thinking that those people are sort of unhappy with the life that they're in. So they'll welcome the idea that to lose weight actually everything has to change. Right. My suspicion is that's not the case for most people. And most people they kind of like their family. They like their friends. They kind of want to keep spending time with their family and friends. They don't mind the routine they're in. Signing up for workouts, this isn't their thing. You don't have to force them to. I mean, I would encourage people to exercise, but they don't want to. They don't want to. It's fine. They don't have to.
Yeah.
Again, none of this matters if you don't care and you don't want to change anything.
Or your value proposition, right? Like if you want to become ultra wealthy and all you have to do is just walk out on your family today, if that's the answer, most people are like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm not doing that. Right. Yeah, some people be like, I'm out the door. I want that. Right. So I think all you have to do to become a multimillionaire is just fundamentally change everything about you and your life. To some people that might be appealing, but for a large body of other people might be like, yeah, no, it's cool. So I think you can make almost that comparison between the two.
Right. So there's kind of there's sort of, I don't know, two answers. One of them is, if you have the means or the access to try a GLP-1 receptor agonist and you failed at all other diets, and this story of changing who you are and how your life is, you're just like, oh my God, is that really what it's going to take? I would suggest try one of those even for a month, and you'll find out, oh geez, like all
I
the
can
people
just be me and lose weight.
Yeah. And all these people who never gain weight aren't special. They're not virtuous. They're not doing anything. All they're doing is eating until they're satisfied, which is all that you were doing. It's just you just stop slightly after you needed to, and they stop right when they needed to. That's it. So there's nothing special about them. There's nothing virtuous about them.
Yeah. And in fact, a small proportion of them is doing the opposite and are just beating themselves up over what they ate, right? And they have this horrible food
Mhm.
relationship that you wouldn't want anyways. So yeah.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
one thing to test if you have the means. If you can't get it prescribed or you don't have access to it. The other thing is, I would say, without changing everything, would be to try Eat Stop Eat or something like an intermittent fasting style,
Yeah.
where okay, so now we're introducing effort. Like GLP-1s, there's hardly any effort. You just kind of eat to what it feels like, and it just happens to be less. But with fasting, you condense the effort into like a day, and the
Yeah.
rest of the week you're just back to being yourself.
Yeah.
And that to me is what we determined ages ago was this is only going to work long term if the effort is compartmentalized and it's small.
Yes. Yeah.
And it cannot be, the answer cannot be change who you are and change who you spend time with. That's almost virtually a no-go for everybody.
Yeah. It would be like if I said you can work out with weights for 1 hour, 3 times a week, or I can load you up with a weighted vest, weighted ankles, weighted wrists, and you can wear that every day for 12 weeks, but you don't have to work out in the gym. The later one that is actually exhausting, right? You're like, oh my God, every day? I'm like, no, every day. Like you can never take them off. And you're like, no, I just want to compartment. Can I just work really hard for an hour or 3 times a week? I'm like, yeah, that's working out. Most people would probably gravitate towards that, right? Just a small amount of effort a couple times a week as opposed to effort all the time, just moving your arms, etc. Right? So we generally like that. We generally like our effort compartmentalized.
Yeah, that's good. So fasting is kind of like a workout.
Yeah.
And you just do it in discrete little chunks, but it doesn't require overhauling your whole lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, I mean, that's basically the topic I wanted to cover today. It was if you're struggling with weight loss and you've heard or been told it requires a monumental life-changing effort that might include even changing who you spend time with, I'm telling you that's not an answer you need to accept. And there are alternatives. Anything to help curb appetite is a first step. And if you can find any supplement that might do that, it's worth trying. Most supplements aren't as potent. Well, none of them are as potent as a GLP-1 receptor agonist. If you can't fetch any kind of appetite suppressing effect off a supplement, and you have the means, try a GLP-1 agonist.
Yep.
If you don't have the means, or you don't like the idea of a drug, like it's scary, it's injections you don't like, or any of that stuff, then fasting is the next simplest thing that, again, you don't have to change your whole life. You just intervene in like discrete moments throughout the week.
Yeah. And you can try playing with your macros too, like your proteins, carbs, fats. Maybe certain foods make you fuller than someone else, right? So you do have to personalize it in that case. If you're going to look for something that doesn't force you to become someone else, then you got to find what works for you.
Right. Yeah. And I'm saying I guess what I'm trying to say is do the thing that forces you to change the least about who you are as a person and about how your life is. So whatever, because that's going to be the thing that's the most sustainable. Whatever, to Brad's point, maybe all you do is just eat less carbs and somehow that works.
Yep.
And you can still go out with your friends. You can still eat with your family. You do everything. It's just the portion of your plate that was going to be a lot of carbs. It's a lot less carbs.
Double meat kind of person now, right? Like maybe that's what it is. Yep.
Right. So whatever the intervention is, the less it requires you to change who you are and change your life, the more sustainable it's probably going to be.
That works for me.
Okay. I think that's a good place to leave it for today. So for Brad Peel, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Phi Life Podcast.